Welcome back to the Hive. We're going to do part two of the Courtney Milne story, and we're going to go ahead and continue on. He actually raced three times for 3 years in the World Championship, and so he was in 36, 37, and 38 World Championship at Wembley. All the races were at Wembley, the World Championships. His first year, like we mentioned, he got fourth place. And that historic 1937 year, he got third place on the podium, his only podium spot. And the following year, he dropped a little and got sixth place. And that was the first 3 years of racing. He was in the World Championship. So that was pretty good. And then the next year, the war broke out in 1939, World War II. Do you remember World War II, where the Germans bombed England and stuff everywhere? And Jack and Cordy and Lammy, they're like, let's get out of here. And so they went ahead and left and went home to America, to the safe confounds of Pasadena, California. They wanted to get out of there because it was dangerous over there in England. And from what I know, pretty much they never returned. They just stayed home. And, Cordy was married and they just stayed home and, they went ahead and did their thing at home. And they took with them like over $4,000. They took a lot of money and they took that money back home to Pasadena and they were able to start a motorcycle shop. They took that money and they invested it. They're very good investors. They didn't squander their money on cigarettes or something. They actually invested their money on something very important, like a motorcycle dealership. And it was called the Milne Brothers Motorcycle Dealership. And it was in Pasadena, California. Does that surprise you? Everything they did was in Pasadena, California. And when I was a young Speedway rider, I was in Pasadena, California, but not with the Milne brothers, but with Jerry Fairchild. He actually spent more than 50 years in Pasadena, California before he left and moved to the ranch in Corona. But while Jerry was in Pasadena for all those many years with the Milne brothers, they must have been friends because they were like neighbors. Jerry told me one day, come here, Brian, I want to take you somewhere. And I said, where? I was only like a young rider. I was only like a first year D1 rider. Actually, yeah. And then he said, we're going to the Milne Brothers shop in Pasadena, California. So we went ahead and we went over to the Milne Brothers shop. And it had this old neon sign, like a circle sign that said Milne Brothers. And I said, oh, this is an old shop, Jerry, because I was only like 16 at the time. And Jerry said, you got to come inside, look at this shop. And so he went ahead and showed me inside. I guess he had a key or something, or maybe it was open. And there was all these old JPs and these old like classic motorcycles. It was really cool. And I think he showed me Jack or Cordy's JP that was sitting in that shop. And he goes, this was a famous motorcycle, the old JP. So that was cool. But at the time, I was only a young kid, and I didn't know who Jack Milne was. I didn't know who Cordy Milne was. I didn't know who anybody was. I was just happy to be riding Speedway. I had no idea what the speed, like most of the young riders, some of these guys don't know, including myself. And that was cool. I got a chance to go inside the Milne Brothers shop, and I got to see all the vintage motorcycles and they had a couple new JAPs for sale. So that was really amazing. And so they went ahead and took that money and they built that motorcycle shop, the Millers. Also, they did so well, they actually invested into a car dealership. They had their own Milne Brothers car dealership back in like, I don't know, about that time when they got back. And then they went ahead and they got big. And I think it was in like Pasadena or Los Angeles area, the big Milne Brothers. So they had a motorcycle shop and a car dealership. And that was really great. And they kind of were racing Speedway a little bit too. And I think that's the time when Jack Milne met Harry Oxley, the godfather of Speedway. And I always pictured Harry like a fast salesman, like Hey, you want to buy this car? Hey, you want to buy this? I have a car for you. I picture Harry Oxley, a fast car salesman. But I talked to Greg Hauserot the other day, and he said that he thought that Harry was the GM, the general manager of the Milne brothers. But I bet Harry Oxley was a fast car salesman before. He's probably the best car salesman ever. And then they promoted him to the general manager position. But I don't know, but that's my guess. That's pretty funny. So that's a little story, and we know that Jack and Harry, they went ahead and they went to the Whiteman Stadium over in Pacoima, California, and they got to see like Speedway. This was back in 1968. They got to see like how the Speedway was run. And Jack and Harry, they were thinking like, we want to start a Speedway track. They were thinking like that. And then they would go to the Whiteman Stadium and they were like, okay, what's the problems here? Okay, the fans are sitting too far back. The track is not right. Pacoima is not right. Nobody going to Pacoima. So they went ahead and figured out all these problems because Jack and Harry Oxley are pretty smart guys. And then they went ahead and they picked the Costa Mesa Speedway in Orange County because they knew that there's the people. They had that little speedway track. The people could sit close around and have the dirt flying in their face and the aroma of the castor oil in their nose. And that's really good. So they went ahead and they took the problems of Whiteman and they improved with the Costa Mesa Speedway. So that was really amazing. And I don't know if Cordy was involved in that, but I'm sure he must have been somehow knowing about what was going on with the Speedway back in those days. So anyway, so they took that money, they built businesses, they made lots of money, and they were opening that Costa Mesa Speedway. So Cordy, let's get back to Cordy now. Enough of the Oxleys and stuff. We want to talk about Cordy on this show. He actually raced for 3 British League teams from 1936 to 1939, and that was pretty much when they, stopped racing the Speedway. He raced in 36 and 37 for the Hackney Wick Wolves. We talked in the first video. You say Hackney Wick Wolves 100 times, and you will go crazy. Hackney Wick Wolves, Hackney Wick Wolves, Hackney Wick Wolves. Forget it. So that's the Hackney in 36 and 37 and 38. He raced for the Bristol Bulldogs. Do you know the Bristol Bulldogs? This guy over here, Cordy, he does not look like a Bristol Bulldog. That was one of his trading cards when he was rich in England. And he's a handsome guy. I mean, Cordy looked like a great looking guy, a great pickup for any woman, Cordy. And so that was really cool. And so he went ahead and raced for the Bristol Bulldogs. He doesn't look like a bulldog. He's a very handsome guy. A bulldog has that face, the chin and stuff. But Cordy, he looks like a very handsome guy to me. So anyway, so that was it in 38. And then the last year that Cordy raced, it wasn't actually a full year because World War II broke out and then everybody had to leave. But he raced for the Southampton Saints. Cordy was a Southampton Saint. Now, he looks more like a Saint to me than a Bulldog. So I would say the Southampton Saints was a team that Cordy raced for. Actually, I lived in Southampton, not when Cordy was there because I'm not that old, but when Cordy was racing, I actually lived in Southampton for about 6 months back some years ago. And I got a chance to actually go to where the Speedway track was. And I think it's down at the bottom of the hill going towards like the ocean or something. They had this big mall. It's a big strip mall like the Orange, what was that called? The Mall of Orange, not the Mall of Orange. It was the Block of Orange. It's like the Block of Orange. It's like an outdoor mall where you walk around and you see the shops like the Block at Orange in California. And so they went ahead and in 1963, they went ahead and they sold that land where the Speedway track was. Barry Briggs was actually on that team, the Southampton Saints, in 63, 62. And they went ahead and they tore the Speedway track out. And they built a shopping mall, that shopping mall that I used to go to. And I much rather would see the Speedway track than a shopping mall. Like, who needs a shopping mall? We want the Speedway track. But Cordy was racing for the Southampton team, and then that war broke out, that terrible World War II, and that kind of ruined everything. But he went ahead and he toured Australia. Cordy was on the Team America. They called it the Cup or something. They called it the test members. He was a test rider for America, and they went ahead and raced the Australian team. So it's kind of like a Team America, like the U.S. versus the world, like that kind of. And they went ahead, and the Americans were racing Australians all over Australia. So, I mean, I could just picture those guys. They raced from like in the 30s and in the 40s, the early 40s. So Cordy was really racing a lot in Australia. And, you know, you could just see like Cordy and Jack and Lammy driving that old like 1920 like car with the Speedway bikes on the back, those bumpy roads in Australia riding, you know, and all of a sudden like Jack is riding and Cordy is like sleeping, you know, next to Jack in the front seat, and then laying down in the back is like Lammy. He's like drinking a Coca-Cola, and he doesn't have an iPad. He's not listening to the music, but he's like boom, boom, and they're riding down an old country road in Australia, bump, 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 and all of a sudden, like a kangaroo comes popping in front of him in the outback, boing, 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 and Jack goes ahead and puts the brakes on, stop, does a Speedway slide. And Jack stops, and then there's a kangaroo, boom, boom, boom. And then everybody wakes up and stuff. And then Jack's like, there was a kangaroo on that outback road. And they're like, hurry up. See the time. We got to go to the races. We got one more day to travel on this bumpy road to the races. So they had a hard life living in those days. They didn't really have good roads, and you know, the racetracks in Australia are far. We had Terry I. Clanton on the show a few weeks ago, and he was actually announcing in Australia back in early 1990s, and he was telling us on the show, if you want to go watch his show there, it's on the channel, that the tracks were really far. Some of the tracks on good roads were like 12-hour drives or 18-hour drives. So you would race, and then you drive almost a day in a car to get to the next track. That was Ivan Major went ahead and sponsored those races. But back in the day when Cordy was riding in Australia in like the 30s and 40s, it must have been really hard to travel far, and it must have been really rough. So he was a test match rider, and he would be riding all over with Jack and Lammy. And so they really just had like a good time racing in Australia. They liked Australia, but it's a big country and it's hard to get to the track. The tracks are really big too, right? In Australia, they're really long. And, you know, being from England, they were racing. They liked the long tracks. That was no big deal. So they went ahead and was racing. And he was single at the time, Cordy, but he had a motorcycle injury. And I guess if you ride a Speedway bike or any bike, you're going to have an injury. I don't know any rider that never crashed a motorcycle. I have, where is it here? I have a broken collarbone I can feel right now from one of my last races I had. And, you know, we all have these injuries, and we all kind of know where they happened. And Cordy got in an accident, though, when he was racing because he was fast. And he was laid up in the hospital. You know, they took him to the hospital, and he was laying in this bed, and there was this little 12-year-old boy next to him. I guess he was sick or something. And this very beautiful lady, she was an Australian beauty, and her name was Verna Ross. And Verna Ross, she came in the hospital room where CORDY was laid up. He was injured. I don't know what happened. Maybe he had a broken collarbone like me, or maybe a broken leg or something. He was hurt though. And this beautiful lady came in, and it was like love at first sight. I mean, it was crazy because CORDY saw this beautiful lady, Verna Ross, and his heart was like boom, 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 boom. He was single at the time. His first wife was kind of like a loser, and CORDY, I believe, is a really good guy. And CORDY really needed a good, solid woman because behind every good guy is a good woman. And CORDY didn't have that the first time around, so he was probably a little picky the next time. But this lady was very beautiful and very lovely, Verna. And his heart, really went pitter patter when he saw that beautiful Australian beauty. And they started dating. She just went in not for him, but take care of her little 12-year-old brother. And they met, while they were like in the same room. Like, hey, what's your name? I like you. CORDY's like laying handicapped. I like you, babe. And so they really hooked up. They became a couple, and they ended up getting married, and they just had a really good life together. And she ended up coming back to America with CORDY when he was racing, when he's healed and came back. And they had a really good life together. They had 5 girls together. Can you imagine a bathroom with 5 girls? Oh, I mean, fighting for the hair curlers and everything like that. Oh, forget it. Girls in the bathroom is bad, but we don't know what happened, but we can only imagine. But he had 5 girls, and one of those girls was the wonderful Sandra Milne. That was her name, Sandra Milne. Sandy or Sandra. And Sandra went ahead and married when she got older. She married Gary Hicks Sr. or Gary Hicks, and Sandra became a Hicks at that time. And then Sandra and Gary, they went ahead and they had a boy, and then they named the boy after the husband, Gary. So they had a Gary Hicks Jr. and the husband was Gary Hicks. So they went ahead and had this racer, and he turned out to be a racer of 21 years, Gary Hicks. Do you remember Gary Hicks? Number 3, Gary was a good rider. I think Gary, where is he? Over there. He went ahead and he took after grandfather's ability right here. He was handsome. They called Gary Gorgeous Hicks because he was a good-looking guy. I don't know about now. Maybe, who knows. But Gary was a gorgeous guy when he was a racer, like his grandpa there, CORDY. And they were both good riders, CORDY and Gary Hicks Jr. And Gary Hicks was a great rider. He won all these main events, and he was just really just amazing. Gary was just a hard charger. He was in if you know Gary Hicks, he was like in all those races, and he won like the California State Championship in 2016. And Gary Hicks won his grandpa's brother, I don't know what they call that, but his grandpa's brother's Jack Milne Cup at the Costa Mesa Speedway. So that would be cool because if I was related to the Milnes and I knew there was a Jack Milne Cup, I would want to win that cup. So that was good. I won the support class at the Jack Milne. It doesn't count. But Gary Hicks, he won the actual cup at the Jack Milne. So that was really great. And Gary Hicks won like countless main events. If you watch Gary Hicks for the last 21 years that he raced, he was in like almost every main event. And Gary Hicks was a really great rider. I mean, he was good, especially when you get him on the scratch racing. Gary Hicks, he was hard charger like his grandpa, and he was hard to beat like his grandpa. So the genes flowed good in the Hicks family, and they came from CORDY Hicks. That's for sure. And Gary Hicks, like I say, he was a chip off the grandpa's block, I think, because he was really an amazing rider. So let's get back to CORDY. So anyways, after the war and during the war, he went ahead and like start racing Speedway in America with like Lammy and with Jack. They were kind of like, promoting the Speedway, getting involved, maybe getting races, and they were doing lots of things. Even while they were in England, before England, in 1933, before they left, they were racing the San Diego Navy Yard in San Diego, California, with Shorty Campbell and Lammy and all these guys. Sprouts Elder, I believe, was there, and all these legends. So Cordy really raced with good riders, and that's why he got so good. He had a lot of good competition. And anyways, he won one more Speedway United States championship. I believe it was like in 1947. So he won those two championships earlier, and he won his last and final United States championship in 1947. So that was great. And so he won a total of 3 United States Speedway championships. But if the war never happened, we believe, especially Cordy up here, he would have won a world championship. I mean, Cordy was robbed, in my opinion, of a world championship because of World War II. So if World War II never happened, we'd be talking today probably that Cordy Milne was a world champion and a U.S. Speedway champion. But that was not to be the case. Kind of like today, we have the coronavirus and the Speedway kind of slowed down, stopped in some tracks. And the same's true in 1939 when the World War II broke out. Speedway kind of slowed down, it kind of stopped. So sometimes in the period of history, we've seen that the Speedway races kind of slowed down and they didn't happen no more. And that's what happened. And that screwed up Cordy. But he couldn't do anything about it. I mean, that was not his fault. So in 1969, like I mentioned, his brother Jack and Harry, they made the Costa Mesa Speedway. So that became legendary. They had United States Speedway Nationals for over 50 years before they had to stop. So the Costa Mesa Speedway definitely flows through the Milne brother bloodline. And I'm sure Cordy knew all about it, probably helped, plan it and stuff. So the Costa Mesa Speedway definitely was in the Milne family and the Oxley family. And Sandra Hicks still works for the Costa Mesa Speedway. She works like the back gate, or she's a scorekeeper, and they still keep it all in the family. So Costa Mesa Speedway was an amazing place, in part because of the Milnes and the Oxley family. It's one of the premier speedway facilities in America still today. We got to get that track open in 2021. We got to ride. I got to crack out my uniform and try a couple laps out there. That will be fun. So we're trying to wait for the Speedway season, and we hope it comes around this year. And so in 1998, Cordy was inducted to the AMA Hall of Fame. Cordy Milne was an AMA Hall of Famer. That's no surprise because he was just an amazing rider. And Cordy passed away a few years before that in October 15th, 1978. Cordy passed away at only 64 years old. Rest in peace, Cordy Milne. We really want to remember you. We respect Cordy Milne because, as history goes on, we don't remember a lot of the stuff. I didn't remember a lot of the history, and we're going to go ahead and share that with you right here because we want to remember these these Speedway riders of the past. And Cordy Milne definitely was one of those riders we want to remember because it's easy to forget these guys because it's so long ago, which, it's okay because nobody remembers history. That's why we're doing this show, so we can remember the back in 1930s and 1940s because it was a very great time in the history, and we cannot forget that. So that's very important that we always remember the early day roots of our American Speedway history because we need to know that. I mean, it's going to be erased if we don't preserve that history. And that's what we want to do, preserve that Speedway history. So Courtney Milne was an unbelievable rider. I mean, this guy was a Speedway champion, 3-time United States Speedway champion. And I would have loved it if we could have had Courtney Milne on the show. I would have loved to talk to him and to pick his brains. I'm sure he's a walking encyclopedia of Speedway knowledge. He probably knows so much about Speedway. It's unbelievable. And that would have been really fun if we could have had Courtney on the show and picked his brains, because I'm sure he had so much knowledge of Speedway. It's unbelievable. And Courtney and Jack Milne's bikes are with Sandra Hicks right now. I don't know where they're at. We probably don't want to know, but when Jack was the 5-time, there's five United States champions. There was Bruce Penhall, there was Sudden Sam Ermolenko, there was Billy the Bullet Hamill, and there was Greg Grin Hancock, and there was Jack Milne. So there's 5 United States Speedway champions in the history of American Speedway. And also, they had a special event back in 2006 or 2007 or something at the Queen Mary in Long Beach. And they had all 4 living Speedway world champions there at that event. They're doing an auction for the American Speedway team going to Europe. And they did a picture, but there was one rider who was missing, and that was Jack Milne. So Sandra Hicks, she brought Jack Milne's 1937 World Championship JEP bike to the Queen Mary. That was really cool. And Gary, her husband, and they took a photo op next to the Speedway bike. So they had the 4 world champions all lined up, and then they had Jack Milne there with his World Championship Speedway bike. So Jack was in that picture, even though it was his JAP. But so we had that beautiful picture with all the world champions of the United States. That was cool. And I didn't buy a poster. I mean, I could kill myself now. I would love that poster right back here. So if you have that poster, I would love to have that one. It's cool. They signed the autographs, and it was amazing. So Jack Milne really was great. And if I ever go back to the States, which I hope so, hopefully this year we ride, I want to go ahead and see Jack Milne and Courtney Milne JAP Speedway bikes. That would be a lot of fun. I want a picture on one of those bikes, like Courtney Milne or Jack Milne's 1936, 37, 38 Speedway bikes, old JAP. Because I'm a JAP rider, so I really like JAPs, and they're kind of special to me. I wish I still had my JAP. I'd probably go riding it today, and it's really great. Also, I do blogging. I don't know, you probably know that. I'm a blogger, and I'm a blabbermouther too. I talk a lot. I think my girlfriend left me because I talk too much, and she don't like that. But anyways, I did a blog a few weeks ago, actually a few months ago, on who was the best brother Speedway combination in Speedway history. And I actually had Rick Woods and Gene Woods. I had Jim Fishbeck and Jimmy Fishbeck. I had Kelly and Sean Moran. And I had Mike and Steve Bass in that competition. I just had fun. I hope nobody hates me. But I did a competition of who was the best brother combination in Speedway history. And it was fun. I kind of had to take it in 2 divisions. One was European riders, brothers, and one was domestic in the United States. And in that particular event, I had the Bass brothers as the top brother combinations in U.S. Speedway history in America. And then I had the Moran brothers at that time, because they were really one of the only brothers that raced in Europe, and they were great. So that was kind of easy. And so I kind of made 2 winners on that thing. And we had a close following with the Fishbecks and the Woods. They're both, amazing a brother. Actually, we didn't have the Fishbecks. That's not a brother. That's a father. I did a father-son. Let's say, who is the other one? I think that's what we had those three. We had a father-son too, and we had the Fishbecks and the father-son. So I made a mistake. Sorry. And but anyways, I think we're gonna do like another one of those, like who's the best, maybe father-son in American Speedway history, and who's the best brother combination. And if you see this name up here, CORDY Milne and Jack Milne, I think they're winners, and those guys are going to be good in that competition. We're going to do another blog, like who's the best brothers in Speedway history, part 2. And CORDY and Jack Milne definitely are in the running for the championship on that one. That's going to be hard to lose. I forgot all about them, and how could I forget these guys? So, see, I forgot about them because, you know, the history starts fading, and we want to remember these legendary guys. So we're going to go ahead and make a blog when I get tired one day, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that one. And so thank you so much for like watching the live stream today. We're talking about the Milne brothers, CORDY, and we'd like to honor his like memory because CORDY was a very amazing rider. He was a gifted rider, and his brother was not bad either. He was pretty good. But we're talking about CORDY today, and CORDY's kind of forgotten, you know, not forgotten, but he's kind of like, you know, shut under Jack because Jack, you know, he did the Costa Mesa and then he did the World Championship. So Jack's older brother by 7 years. So Jack kind of gets a lot of the notoriety over CORDY. But CORDY, you know, he won the United States Championship and he beat Jack Milne, his brother. So he's, you know, this guy was a rider. He was really, you know, he could ride. So we don't want to diminish the ability of CORDY Milne because he was truly a great rider in his day and he beat everybody a lot. So CORDY was a gifted rider. And so we respect CORDY and we wish, you know, CORDY to rest in peace. We know that if there's like a gold speedway track in heaven, that you're going to see like CORDY and Jack Milne riding those old 1937 JAPs around that gold track in heaven. And they'd probably never stop riding. They're lovers of Speedway and with a few other legendary Speedway people. So hopefully, you know, they're doing well, and we wish the family, the Hicks family, all the best, and the Milne family. So they're really just legendary in the Speedway, and we honor and respect the Milnes today, especially CORDY Milne. So we have like a special guest tomorrow night. We have Larry Huffman in the hive. Larry Motormouth Huffman. And when I was a little boy, like 16, I was a racer. And I used to go to Costa Mesa when I was riding, when I first started riding. I was in the changing room, and Larry Huffman would come in the changing room, and he would look at me, and I had this like horrible uniform I bought from Ron Taylor, and it was just really terrible. And I was a whole rider too, and Larry Huffman would be putting on his tuxedo because he always did that, and then get ready for his Huffman shuffle. And then Larry would say like, "Hi, Brian, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Is Larry Huffman talking to me?" And Larry's like, "Yeah, how you doing?" And like, "Tell me more about yourself, Brian." And I was really happy that Larry Huffman like was a nice guy, and he like I was nobody. I wasn't like a famous rider. I was like nothing. I was like a fly on the wall. I was a fly on the wall. And Larry Huffman gave me attention. He said, "Oh, so we want to know more about you." And he was asking me, "So we're going to have Larry Huffman tomorrow." And I am going to be interviewing Larry Huffman this time. He's not going to interview. Well, we're going to talk. We're going to have fun, Larry Huffman. He's a great guy. And we're really looking forward to talking with him because he has an amazing history. And he's one of the greatest announcers ever. Him and Bruce Flanders are two of the greatest, you know, announcers. Rest in peace, Bruce Flanders. We really love Bruce Flanders and Larry Huffman, two of the all-time Speedway legend announcers. And we have Larry Huffman going to be in the hive. We're excited about Larry Huffman. Also on Saturday, which is going to be like a couple days from now at 9 a.m. in California time. Like we mentioned, we have Bruce, the Fox Penhall. He's going to be on the show in the Hive. He's a two-time world champion. He's won 2 back-to-back United States champion and world championships. This guy is amazing. He's one of the top 5 riders in Speedway ever. He's one of the top 1 or 2 United States Speedway riders ever. And he was hard to beat. If you beat Bruce Penhall, you beat a really amazing guy. I mean, this guy was a legend. He didn't like to lose, I can tell you that. He won a lot. And Bruce Penhall is an amazing human being, amazing rider, and we're honored to have the Fox in the Beehive today. Or actually, it's going to be this Saturday at 9 a.m. So you want to mark your calendars because there's going to be a lot of people going to watch that live stream because Bruce Penhall is world famous. He has fans everywhere, and everybody loves to see Bruce Penhall and to hear. And we're going to have fun with Bruce. We're going to talk about some cool stuff. So you might want to stay tuned. It's going to be on YouTube. You can go ahead and subscribe if you want to the channel and push the notification bell. That way you won't miss that live stream. And we have Aaron Fox, the 2-time United States Speedway champion, on the show soon. And we have a big list of riders. So we're going to have fun. We got some really great shows lined up. So we want to thank you so much for visiting us. Part 2 of the Courtney Milne Show. And we got a little cut off on part 1, so we're going to do part 2 here. And we hope you enjoyed it. Courtney was an amazing rider, amazing human being. And we just honored to talk about this true and living legend, Courtney Milne, today on the show. So we're going to talk more about Larry Huffman, Bruce Penhall, and a list of other riders. Today is a throwback. It's a history lesson of early day Speedway. So please take care, ride safe. I'm going to go riding my motorcycle right now. I'm getting on my bike. I ride my bike every day. So please stay on 2 wheels. Don't get hurt. And just be safe always on motorcycle. And we're going to catch you tomorrow night with the Larry Huffman Show. So have a great day. Thanks for watching. God bless. And we'll see you next show.